The diner smelled of burnt coffee and regret, but Karen didn't care. She was too busy spitting venom. Her sister, Darlene, cackled like a hyena, egging her on as if public humiliation was an Olympic sport. Karen's fleshy jowls quivered as she jabbed a sausage-like finger at the trembling waitress, Ellie, whose name tag hung crookedly on her apron. "You call this service?" Karen bellowed, her voice slicing through the diner's evening hum like a dull knife. "I've been waiting 20 minutes for a burger, you lazy little nobody." Her words dripped with disdain, each syllable a deliberate jab meant to wound. Ellie, barely 19, clutched her tray like a shield, her cheeks burning red under the weight of every patron's stare. Darlene, perched on the edge of her seat like a vulture, chimed in. "Bet she's too busy texting her boyfriend to do her job." The sisters shared a smug glance, their laughter a grating harmony of entitlement. The diner, a cozy hole-in-the-wall called Mama's Place, was packed with its usual after-work crowd, truckers, locals, and a couple of out-of-towners. But tonight, the air felt heavier, charged with the kind of tension that makes your skin prickle. Ellie stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am sorry, ma'am. The kitchen's backed up, but I'll check on your order." "Backed up?" Karen interrupted, slamming her palm on the table, rattling the ketchup bottles. "Don't give me excuses. You're just slow. Useless. I bet you'd mess up a glass of water." Her face, flushed with self-righteous fury, gleamed under the diner's fluorescent lights. She leaned closer, her breath sour with diet soda, and hissed, "People like you shouldn't be allowed to work here." The words hit Ellie like a slap. She froze, her eyes welling up, but she didn't back down. Something in her, a flicker of defiance, kept her rooted. "I'm doing my best, ma'am," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "Please, just give me a minute." Karen scoffed, rolling her eyes so hard it looked painful. "Your best? Honey, your best is a disgrace." Darlene snorted, muttering something about kids these days, and the sisters' cruelty seemed to feed off each other, a vicious loop of arrogance. Unbeknownst to them, two police officers sat in the corner booth, their uniforms partially hidden by the dim lighting and a half-eaten plate of fries. Officer Ramirez, a wiry man with a no-nonsense stare, exchanged a glance with his partner, Officer Chun, whose hand rested lightly on her radio. They'd come to Mama's Place for a quick bite after a long shift, but now their attention was locked on Karen and Darlene. Ramirez raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching with the kind of amusement that comes from watching someone dig their own grave. The diner's other patrons shifted uncomfortably. A trucker in a flannel shirt muttered under his breath, and an elderly woman at the counter clutched her coffee mug a little tighter. But no one intervened, not yet. It was as if the room held its breath, waiting for the breaking point. Karen, oblivious to the growing tension, escalated her attack. "You know what?" she said, standing up, her chair scraping loudly against the linoleum floor. "I'm done with this dump. And you," she pointed at Ellie, "you're getting reported. I know the owner. You're finished." Ellie's face crumpled, but before she could respond, Karen did something unthinkable. With a dramatic flourish, she leaned forward and spat on Ellie's apron. The wet, ugly sound echoed in the now silent diner. Darlene burst into laughter, clapping her hands like she'd just seen the punchline of the century. The room froze. Ellie's hands trembled, the tray slipping slightly in her grip. Her eyes, wide with shock, darted from Karen to the floor, as if she could will herself to disappear. But then, something shifted. The trucker in the flannel stood up, his chair clattering. The elderly woman at the counter gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. And Officers Ramirez and Chin slid out of their booth, their movements calm but deliberate. "Ma'am," Ramirez said, his voice low and commanding, "step away from the waitress." Karen whipped around, her face a mix of surprise and indignation. "Who do you think you're talking to?" she snapped, her chins wobbling. "This is none of your business." "Oh, it's very much our business," Chin said, her tone sharp as she flashed her badge. The diner's lights glinted off the metal, and Karen's bravado faltered for a split second. Darlene, however, wasn't so quick to back down. "You can't do anything. Darlene barked, folding her arms defiantly. We're customers. We have rights. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. You have the right to be decent human beings, but you seem to have missed that memo. He gestured to Ellie, who was still frozen, her apron stained with Karen's spit. Spitting on someone is assault, and we witnessed it. The word assault hit Karen like a freight train. Her mouth opened, then closed, her brain scrambling for an excuse. "Tu didn't mean," she stammered, but Chin cut her off. "Save it for the station," Chin said, pulling out her handcuffs. The metallic click sent a ripple through the diner, and the patrons' murmurs grew louder. The trucker clapped slowly, a grin spreading across his face. The elderly woman nodded approvingly, muttering, "About time." Karen's face turned a sickly shade of purple. "You can't arrest me," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Do you know who I am? I'm on the HOA board. I have influence. And I'm Officer Chun," the woman replied coolly. "And I don't care about your HOA." She motioned for Karen to turn around, but Karen flailed, knocking over a glass of water. It shattered on the floor, the sound punctuating her unraveling. Darlene, sensing the tide turning, tried to backpedal. "Look, we were just upset, okay? The service was awful. She deserved it." But her words only deepened the hole they were in. The trucker shook his head, and even the out-of-towners, who'd been silent until now, whispered to each other in disgust. Ellie, still clutching her tray, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't deserve that," she said, looking Karen in the eye. "No one does." The words hung in the air, simple but piercing. Karen's face twisted, but for the first time, she had no retort. The diner, once a stage for her cruelty, now bore witness to her downfall. Ramirez and Chun escorted the sisters out, Karen's protests growing weaker with every step. The handcuffs gleamed under the diner's lights, a cold reminder of consequences. As the door swung shut behind them, the patrons erupted into quiet chatter, some shaking their heads, others offering Ellie sympathetic smiles. The trucker approached Ellie, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You okay, kid?" he asked. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Good," he said. "You're tougher than you look." The elderly woman at the counter slid a $20 bill across to Ellie. "For your trouble," she said softly. "Don't let people like that dim your light." Ellie managed a small smile, her hands still shaking as she tucked the bill into her apron. The diner slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but the air felt different, lighter, as if a storm had passed. Outside, Karen and Darlene sat in the back of the police cruiser, their faces a mix of defiance and dawning regret. Karen stared out the window, her mind racing. She'd always believed her status, her loud voice, her ability to intimidate, made her untouchable. But tonight, in a small diner she'd dismissed as beneath her, she'd learned a bitter lesson. Cruelty has a price, and the bill always comes due. Ellie, back inside, took a deep breath and returned to her tables. She wasn't just a waitress, she was someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone who deserved respect. And as she refilled coffee cups and cleared plates, she carried herself a little taller, knowing she'd stood her ground. The handwritten note on the napkin, still pinned under the coffee mug, seemed to glow under the diner's lights. Karen's rage, a bitter end. It was more than a headline, it was a warning. Actions have consequences, and for Karen and Darlene, those consequences were just beginning. The diner's door chimed as a new customer walked in, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. Life moved on, as it always does, but for those who'd witnessed the night's events, one truth lingered. Kindness costs nothing, but cruelty can cost everything. The end.